Is a Revit add-in that allows the user to pass over rooms, quantities, and item numbers from Revit into SpecWeb, SpecSource's web-based application. It's very easy to use, and you don't have to start with SpecBIM or SpecSources. You can start working in either application and kind of do everything at the same time. So I'm in SpecWeb right now, and what I did, I just created a project here, and I just called it Project Hotel Revit. This is a blank project. There's no specs in here right now, as you can see. And it doesn't matter whether you've got a spec writer that's working in SpecSources and SpecWeb and is creating specs, or you can start with a blank project. The only thing you have to do is have a project somewhere in SpecWeb that you can pass data to from Revit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up Revit. And so I've got a Revit model here, and I just tagged a couple of these items just to kind of show you the tags. You don't have to do that, but I just did it to make things a little bit easier. But there is a menu option here, SpecSources, and I'm going to go to Setup. And so this is the only screen that really has a lot going on, but it's very simple to use. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, where do we want to pass the data from Revit 2 and SpecWeb? So I'm going to choose this project I created here. So once we do that, you've got a few different options that you can do here. The first thing is labels. Now, most people do not pass over Revit parameters into SpecSource's labels field. It's very rarely done. Normally, designers will use SpecSource's templates with the preset labels they've already got established and pass data into those. But if you'd like to do it, you can click here, and then this will pull up any of the parameters within this Revit model. And you just say add, it'll add it to the top, and then you have the option of passing those fields into SpecSource's items. The next three things are important though. This is SpecSource's control number, and all we're doing is saying, where do we want to map this to Revit? Where do we want to get this out of Revit? I'd say 99% of the people use the type mark field. And so all you do is you're going to put a control number in the type mark, and then that's where we're going to recognize it and be able to pass that into SpecWeb. But you can use other fields also. You can use parameters, type parameters. If you click those, you get an option of typing it in here below. Area is our term, it's a SpecSource's term. Where do we want to get the area field? And remember, in Revit, in SpecSources, areas are a big space, like a floor or a level. And so we're going to say, where do we want to get that information out of Revit? And normally it's going to be level, but you can do department, or you can do custom fields also here. Right? You can use particular room parameters or other parameters if you'd like. SpecSource's room. Where do we want to get that out of Revit? Normally it's going to be room number and name, but you can just do room number. You can just do room name. Again, you can do a custom parameter. Sometimes people will use custom parameters for rooms. So this is the main mapping that you have to do to get started. And again, once you do it once for the project, you don't have to come back to this. But if you do, you can change this on the fly. Because we're not affecting any of the data in Revit. All we're doing is leveraging the information that's already in Revit and bringing that into SpecWeb. So below here, I'm not going to go into this on this demo, but this allows you to read room types from Revit parameters. And then there's a couple other things that you can do here with control numbers. You can calculate, or I'm sorry, with materials, you can calculate those based on a keynote field by area or by volume, but most people don't use that. The last couple things here I want to talk about is use rooms and linked Revit files for item location tracking. So what that's going to do is it allows you to use linked models. And so if you're doing a model for every floor, you can select all those floors and grab all those files at one time and visualize the data at once. So all I'm going to do is say OK. And so once I do that, you're going to see these other icons open up here. And so we're going to talk a little bit about sync data. First thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to click on this item, and I'm going to click on Edit Type. So all you have to do is just select what you want the control number to be, and you put it in the type mark field. Right? And you can use this a lot of different ways. I'm using it very basically with like CH1, T1 for control numbers, but you can use areas. There's other ways you can set this up depending on how your company's workflow is, and you can change it project by project if you need to. So I'm going to say OK. And Revit knows that this item is in Lounge 7, and it knows it's also over here and in these other rooms. So that what's nice is you only have to really assign that type mark one time to one of the objects here, and it'll do it for throughout the entire family. So once you've done that and you've tagged all those items, all you're going to do is come over here and click on Sync Data. And what Sync Data is going to do, it's going to go and pull the drawing, and it's going to pull in all of the items that you're tracking, all of the families. Now, I'm going to digress for a second. Revit, we will track all of the furniture and systems furniture families by default, but you can choose any family you'd like to track, and that was in the setup screen. And so you can track lighting, specialty equipment. It's up to you, anything you like in the model. But once you do that, it's going to give you a list of everything that you're tracking here. And if you scroll to the right, you'll see all these items are being tracked, and you can turn that off if you'd like. All of these items currently are in Revit, but you'll see to the right they're not in spec sources. So when we sync this up, this in spec sources will be checked. But let me show you a couple things here. There's a lot of different ways you can visualize your data. And so if you say, all right, I want to look at my counts by control number, you can just drag this field here, up here. And you can see, all right, control number is CG02, and I've got 3 of them, and it'll show you where they're going. And you can use this grid. It's pretty flexible. You could say, all right, I want to see everything by the area, by the level. And we show you the field that it's mapped to here below. And then you can say location, room number, and name. And then you can see that here. So you can see areas, level 1. Click on that. You've got your room numbers here, lobby 4. And then that's the furniture in the lobby 4. And so you can use any of those fields to organize your data that you'd like. You can also limit up here. I can limit it by floor. I can limit it by room name and number. And you can limit it by file name if you have multiple files that are linked here also. And you can remove out the files if you need to. The other thing you can do here, if you want to find out exactly where this particular item is, you can say find in Revit. And this does this one item at a time, so it's going to take you to whatever this particular item is. You probably won't need that a whole lot. So when you're ready, all you're going to do, you can either click select all, or you can use shift and control to select whatever you'd like. So I'm just going to go here and just choose this. I'll just do CG01 and CH01. And you don't have to select every CG01 or every CH01. It's going to grab the counts for all of those. So if you just want to do one, you can do it. Now, once we do that, we're going to have some options. I'm going to click Sync Selected Data to Spec Sources. Select some or all items above. We've already done that. And so this has a lot of text on it. All you have to really worry about are these last 3 things in bold. So these are your options. You can pass over the Revit family name to Spec Sources item name if you'd like. Or you can pass over the Revit description to Spec Sources item name. So what this does, it just gives you a placeholder in the item name so that you kind of know what that item was named in Revit. And you can overwrite it in Spec Sources later, but it just gives you a starting point and a reminder of what that item was. If you uncheck both of those, it's going to put the word pending there. And so it's just going to be up to you to put in whatever you want it to be. An important note is that if you do change the item name in Spec Sources and you repass the data, it will not overwrite your name in Spec Sources with the item name. And this is the last option. You have the option of passing the Revit thumbnail to Spec Sources primary image. And same with this. This is going to bring over this little picture here. It's just a placeholder for you to know what it is, and you can replace that with the actual image. But again, if you've put in an actual image, you don't have to worry that you're going to overwrite that with this kind of line drawing that's in Revit. So all I'm going to do is say proceed. You see this little wheel spin here. It takes a second. Data syncing is complete. And if we go to the right now, we're going to see these items are in Revit and in Spec Sources. And if you want to see a list of which ones are there, you can just drag this field up here and group by it if you'd like. So I'm going to close this for now. I'm going to go back into Spec Web, and I'm just going to refresh this schedule. So what happens is, if I passed over items from Revit that did not exist in Spec Web, then it will create blank spec sheets for all those items. So you could have 100 items within a project, click a button in SpecBIM, and pass all those over and create 100 blank spec sheets here, and then go about editing them and do whatever you need to do. So we're going to click on this item. We're going to see the item name here, Knoll Lounge Chair. We're going to see the image here that we brought over. If we brought over labels, you would see labels here, but we didn't do that because we're going to use the spec sources template here and just choose what fields we want to put in for that item. But it's a good starting point. You've got the name, you've got the picture, but more importantly, at the very bottom, you've got all of the areas and rooms where that item's going in the Revit model with quantities. So that's going to give you your total quantity here. If you need to adjust that, you can just add bulk quantity over here, and that's going to give you a total quantity. And it's also going to bring all that information over here into the areas in the room section. So these were all blank a minute ago, but it brought in all of the areas and rooms from the Revit model with furniture in it. Now, there's a couple of the little bells and whistles. I'm not going to go into too many of these because they're not used that often. But one is you can create room types here, assign those room types to rooms, and you can pass all of the room types along with the rooms and the quantities from Revit into SpecWeb. The other thing you can do through here, and I'm not going to go into it because it takes a little bit longer, but you can create virtual copies of rooms so that if, for instance, this model is on the first floor, and then you have a second, third, fourth, fifth floors within the same Revit model, you can virtually copy the furniture from one room to another without having to put the actual families in the room. And we recognize those as quantities, and you can pass those into spec sources. So there's a lot more functionality that the tool can do, but I just wanted to kind of go over the basics.